Welcome to the conversation. I'm Jonathan Larson, TYT's managing editor. Some 200 organizations have just asked President Biden not to force millions of people to have to resume their monthly student loan payments. Unless he does something, that's exactly what's going to happen in January, at the end of January. So what happens then? Well, Michael Sainato is a labor and economic justice reporter who recently looked into exactly that for the Guardian newspaper and joins us tonight. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So let's talk about the sort of worst case scenario here. Biden does nothing, and the pause on student loan repayments comes to an end at the end of January. What happens then?
So at the end of January, right now, over 44 million Americans have student debt. The average payment is around $400 a month. Most people have federal student loans, and those people have had 2 years of relief, so they haven't had to make that huge extra payment every month. And with everything going on with the labor market, over 15 million workers are still being impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, whether they're unemployed out of the labor force or still working reduced schedules or with reduced pay. So that's going to put people back onto student debt, and that's when the interest on those loans with that pause is going to start continuing to accrue and build up. And speaking with people with big sums of student debt that are struggling to get out ahead of it, that's a significant problem, especially when it comes to private loans that people take out for school, because those interest rates are higher, and that compounds a lot quicker, especially if you get out of school and some people might not pay attention to it the first few years while they get their career on the the right path, and then they look ahead and they owe 2 or 3 times more than they originally took out, and then even after making payments on a regular basis, they're really not cutting into that principle, and I think that's a really big issue. You have a lot of people who are not in an economic position to take on paying these loans once again, and they're not in an economic position where they can get out ahead of the high interest with student debt.
And explain the role, you touch on this a bit in your article, but explain the role that systemic racism plays, not necessarily so much in terms of this pause or anything, but just in student loans generally, but therefore in terms of the impact the resumption of repayments will have.
Well, student loans, the money is run by the banks. So there's all sorts of reports, studies on how banks and lenders discriminate against Black Americans and other racial groups. There was an analysis a few years ago done by Brookings that found Black graduates from college, as soon as they get out of college, they owe around $7,800 more in student debt than white college graduates. And in 4 years, because of interest and because of the kinds of loans Black graduates are able to obtain to get into school, that gap expands to over $25,000 in 4 years. And I spoke with a lot of Black college graduates who are struggling with student debt, and they've had that issue where they are dealing with really, really, really high interest rates. I tweeted a student loan debt example from one of those people who is a lawyer in North Carolina. She took out a substantial amount of student debt to get through law school, $72,000. She wasn't able to make payments because she wasn't making enough money the first few years out of school. And then, now she pays, she makes a good amount of money as a lawyer, but she's paying $1,400 a month. And, you see on that example, I posted on Twitter that she's paid more than the money she's taken out, but she still owes over $100,000 when she only took out $72,000 in debt. And that's, not an anomaly. I think there's a lot of different examples of of people, being buried with student debt because of that.
And all of that's accounted for by interest that's accrued over the years. So explain a little bit about how the systemic racism manifests, right? Because something has to happen in the loan process as soon as the loan is issued. Is it that they're denied as good rates? What exactly happens to create that inequity right out of the gate?
Well, they're given just loans with higher interest rates, just based on your credit. That Brookings analysis, that's what it attributed it to.
Predatory rates.
Predatory rates, or just worse rates, especially with private loans. If federal student loans aren't enough to cover your college tuition, which may be the case, especially in recent years, with tuition rates have been soaring and government subsidizing in higher education has been dwindling and been cut over the past few decades. Just as an example, in the late 1980s, per pupil, federal and state subsidies for higher education were over $8,000 when inflation's taken into account. Now it's just a little over $2,000. So you have a lot more people attending college nowadays, and the government is subsidizing less and less of that, and that's part of the profiteering of the college system, and the banks play a big part of that.
Sure, and I think people tend to have, if they don't have debt, if they haven't been through this themselves, I think they tend to have this assumption that the people facing really crushing debt, that those people are somehow responsible. They somehow screwed up. So of all the people you talk to for your piece, who stuck out to you as someone who they did everything right? They played exactly by the rules. They bought into everything they're told, and now here they are, and they're going to die in debt. That kind of scenario. Who stuck out for you that way?
I think I spoke with some parents who took out these federal Parent Plus loans to pay their college, the college tuition for their children, we're this. Narrative is pushed in our society that higher education, a college degree is compulsory now. But in order to do that for families that can't afford tuition out of pocket, it's kind of given to take on this huge amount of debt and to do whatever is necessary in order to get the loans just to pay the tuition, not really worrying about what may be the best loan. It's really in the matter of, how can I get this money to pay for school, and then worry about it. And then those, the rest of the economic issues come into play where, wages are stagnant. You get out of college and you're, making poverty wages. You look on job applications even now,
You spoke to, I think, a child therapist, if I remember correctly, who had some $50,000 in debt or something, or no, excuse me, that was what she made for a year, I believe. And there's just no way she can make any headway with that kind of salary, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of distressing because they got into a field that people are needed. You're helping the community. You're engaged in social work. You're not going into that field to make a ton of money, right. But that those positions require master's degrees or higher education training, and you need to take out debt to do that. And you're not getting paid a salary where it's feasible to be able to pay that off unless you're coming from a family or an economic background where it's not a big deal to pay enormous amounts of tuition.
So real quickly, what has Biden said he would do, and what should he actually do, both at the end of January or before the end of January, and long term?
He, on the campaign trail, he promised to cancel $10,000 of student debt for all Americans, and he promised to make community college free and to cancel student debt for college graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. He hasn't done any of those things. In the past few months, he's expanded a little bit public service loan forgiveness to several thousand people, which is great. But I think what's coming from the progressive movement is this is a huge problem. It's a mounting problem. It's a big concern for younger generations who are taking this debt on, and he needs to use his executive authority to cancel the debt. I personally would like to see all of it be canceled. A lot of progressives are capping that at least $50,000, and then if you're making more income, it'll come down after that. But I think that's the bare minimum that needs to be done to address this issue.
Michael Sainato, labor and economic justice reporter. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.